Electric bills are climbing across the country while demand for power is surging from population growth, AI technology, and those massive data centers. New data from the Solar Energy Industries Association shows U.S. electricity prices jumped nearly 7% last year. That's more than double the rate of inflation, by the way. So here in Georgia, however, electricity remains cheaper than the national average at about 15 cents per kilowatt, but prices are slowly going up. To that, our state has become one of the nation's fastest growing solar markets. So the Solar Energy Industries Association reports more than 7.6 gigawatts of solar installed. That's enough to power more than 900,000 homes. Let's charge it up in this discussion on solar energy with Sean Gallagher, SEIA's Senior Vice President of Policy. Sean, glad to have you here this morning. So let's talk nationally first. Electricity rates and the prices jumped nearly 7%, as I said, last year. So is the biggest factor here fuel cost, rapid growth in electricity demand? What's causing it?
Yeah, it's a combination of increased demand. Demand is rising faster than we've seen in decades as a result of largely data centers and artificial intelligence. Also, some of the new manufacturing that we've seen in Georgia and elsewhere. Of course, we've also seen some volatility in natural gas prices. So solar energy is a good way to control those costs.
All right. Well, Sean, you know, Georgia is one of the fastest growing states in the country. How much of the power demand is coming from the growth that we're seeing here versus maybe new technology like AI and something that we are talking about a lot here in Georgia right now, the data centers?
Yeah, it's a combination of those things. It's manufacturing, it's data center growth, it's growing population. And the way to control costs as demand is rising is to add new supply to the system. Solar energy is the most affordable and the fastest way to add new power to the system. Makes it a great solution for data centers and for customers alike.
Well, speaking of the data centers, Sean, how dramatically are those data centers changing the demand when it comes to electricity?
Yeah, we've seen demand shoot up, or demand projections shoot up over the last few years. It's really made the case that we need to add more power to the grid, not less. And those data centers, what they need is speed to power. The faster they can get power, the faster they can bring themselves online. And so what's the solution for them? It's really solar power and battery storage, because we're the fastest way to bring new power on the grid. As demonstrated by that report you mentioned, about 80% of all the new resources brought online across the country last year was solar energy and battery storage. And that's because it's fast and it's affordable.
All right, as we just heard, you and your organization are proponents of solar. You believe it can keep the electricity prices stable, but there are some skeptics who say solar is intermittent. What evidence really shows that it actually lowers the energy costs long term?
Yeah, well, we are aware that the sun goes down at night, and the engineers who run the grid are aware of that also, and certainly can plan for that. The best example I can give you is out of Texas, where they've added a ton of solar and battery storage the last few years, and prices in the highest times of demand this summer were lower than they had been when they had record demand the prior year. So solar really is the most affordable new resource to bring online, and bring more online, you can have lower wholesale energy prices for everybody.
Yeah, bringing them online is the key. So what's the real timeline for a lot of these projects to actually get generated? You know, obviously going from approval to the actual, you know, generation of these things happening.
Right. Well, if it's a project on a customer's roof, of course, it can be you know, weeks or a few months. But for larger projects, typically a year or 18 months will be enough to bring on most of the solar power plants. In contrast, if you're building a new natural gas plant, that could take you 5 or 7 years. And if you're a data center, you don't have that kind of time to wait. You've got to bring that power on sooner.
The new study out this morning from the University of Georgia that finds bird flu may be killing tens of thousands of black vultures across the southeast. And researchers say the way these birds feed may actually help that virus spread year-round. So let's bring in the lead researcher on this study, Associate Professor of Veterinary Medicine at UGA, Nicole Nemeth. Nicole, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I read through part of your study, and you know, it said that 80% of the dead black vultures that you tested had bird flu. Can you just put that in perspective to us? How alarming is that number to you?
The whole picture is alarming because those vultures that we tested at the Southeastern Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study at UGA, they represent many, many, many more vultures that have died. And I say that because What we do every day is we receive carcasses of wildlife with the intent to diagnose why contributors, causes of death, to help understand the bigger picture, what are population health threats to wildlife. And we get these cases in, but they represent, we work with state wildlife agencies, and if we get a black vulture in as one case, so one of those numbers that you just quoted, it often represents in the field maybe 100 or 200 black vultures that are dying on a given site. So that observation when we get these cases was really alarming, and the high percentage was not surprising because these black vultures, they're big birds, they're dark birds. When they die, people notice them pretty readily, depending where that is. Sometimes it's in neighborhoods or near businesses and things like that. So the fact that we started getting a lot more vultures, that was the concern. We usually don't get that many. People maybe aren't as concerned about vultures. They see, an occasional dead vulture and it's no big deal. But this was a picture that people were noticing dozens to hundreds of black vultures, and they just look like on the landscape, all these kind of black piles of feathers, and they do hang out there, very social. They roost together in trees, as people probably see in their neighborhoods. And so they feed in groups. So when they start dying of something that kills them quickly and is highly infectious between vultures, that's what the picture looked like. So it was very concerning.
Nicole, what did you find in terms of how the bird flu is spreading amongst vultures?
Yeah, I love that question because that really is kind of a key to the story and one of the more interesting things that prompted us to try to put this information out there. It's a bit unique. Of course, people that are kind of bird fanatics, they'll be aware that there are birds of prey or raptors that predate other animals. Black vultures are scavengers. They are in the birds of prey group, but they scavenge, so they eat dead stuff. And and so they're going after these things that they see, easy things to eat in the wild, like any of us would. But they're getting the virus from eating these carcasses that have died. Like, so if a waterfowl or a duck dies of the virus, they find it, they eat it, they really pretty readily get infected. But the unique part about vultures was that when they start dying in groups, they're kind of smart from an evolutionary standpoint, and they start eating each other when they're dead already. But there's food right there on the ground, underneath. They wake up in the morning in a group of birds. Some birds have died overnight. And so it started to perpetuate. So these cycles in vultures last up to 9 months of just birds dying every day, other birds seeing them that are healthy, but eating those birds because it's easy and to them, it's just food on the ground. So they're getting it through eating. And when a bird dies of the virus, that pile of flesh on the ground has a lot of virus in it. So they're ingesting huge amounts of virus. So as a wildlife pathologist, I was seeing lesions and damage all the way from the mouth when they're eating this food. It starts causing damage right in the lining of your mouth, and then all the way down through the digestive tract, and it'll kind of burn right through. It effaces and damages the lining, and the virus gets absorbed into the bloodstream, and they get infected. It's a very, very bad infection for them, and they die pretty quickly.
It reminds me of the saying, it's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it. And the vultures taking care of it, eating the dead stuff when nobody else wants to. I mean, if their population starts to decline, why should that matter to everyday Georgians watching this right now?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Initially, when this virus has been around for a few years now, and it looks like it's not going anywhere. So that's another piece of the puzzle. And if you see, initially, I remember one of my colleagues, a biologist for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, Bob Sargent, he would say, anecdotally, we're seeing more deer roadkill build up on the side of the road because we knew these vultures were dying in high numbers. And so, people might not think that, okay, that's displeasing to the eye and they don't want to see dead deer on the side of the road, but really, like you just hit the nail on the head. Black vultures are kind of considered, and really vultures, that whole group of birds, is nature's cleanup crew, and they come through and they take care of that for us. And there's a lot of them. Like, people will know, if you wake up in the morning, you're going to work, you probably look up in the sky and you might see some black vultures circling around. So really, we started to worry, are we going to start seeing less vultures as hundreds and hundreds and thousands of these birds are dying throughout the Southeast, and that is the question that remains. But I think people should worry because, like you said, they're nature's cleanup, and they are doing a service. And really, there's been studies that have shown that because vultures provide this cleanup service, there's less disease on the landscape, less other wildlife, companion animals. There's just less bacteria. They clean up all the pathogens and organisms and things growing in the carcasses. So they really do a great service to us all. So it is concerning if they disappear or they become, lower populations than we need to do that job.
Nicole Nemeth, I thank you for your time this morning. Check out her study. It's on UGA Today right now. Just search bird flu rampant among black vultures, and you can find it right now with a quick Google search.
Travelers are running into new headaches at airports across the country. Unrest in the Middle East is forcing a lot of airlines to reroute international flights, while a partial government shutdown here in the U.S. is stretching TSA staff and air traffic controllers pretty thin. Airlines around the world are avoiding large sections of Middle East airspace, with the trade site FlightAware reporting 1 out of every 4 global flights being affected. This is forcing longer routes and disrupting global flight schedules. With regards to the partial government shutdown, well, the Department of Homeland Security reports about 60,000 TSA workers are having to work without pay. The timing certainly couldn't be worse, just as spring break and the travel is taking off. More than 160 million Americans expected to take to the skies this spring. So joining us now to break it down and talk about it all and what you as a traveler can expect is Christina Ernst, president of VIP Alpine Tours. Glad to have you back on here, Christina. So when you look at everything happening right now, the military fighting overseas, all those rerouted flights that we talked about, and the issues with TSA staffing, it is shaping up to be a very difficult time, really probably one of the worst we've seen in years.
I agree. It's already started. Spring break officially started last Saturday in the Atlanta airport, and wow, we definitely jumped right in and packed it with a punch with delays across the United States. And Atlanta itself is expecting over 100,000 passengers a day to travel through the airport, with peak days over the next couple of weekends, 115,000, 120,000 passengers that need to be screened by these TSA workers that are not getting paid. Yeah. And so we are expecting to see a lot of headaches over the next couple of weeks, but there are ways to alleviate that stress, and not just by staying home. We definitely want to continue with our vacations and trips as we have them planned, but we do need to take some precautions as we head down towards the airport or to the airport. And one of the things that I suggest, first of all, is to make sure that you do have a good app uploaded or on your phone to be prepared for these delays and issues that we can run into. So TSA has a wonderful app that has wait times for airports across the United States, and ATL.com/times is another one. Just check that. We're already having headaches in Atlanta with over 30-minute delays through the North Point or the North Security checkpoints. But there are a total of 4 checkpoints in Atlanta on the domestic side that a lot of people don't know about. So those apps are a great way to see, oh, do I need to maneuver over to this area to save some time with screening?
It's so important.
As we move forward
Go ahead.
And as we move forward into the travel, we also need to make sure that we are prepared in our carry-ons and always have a change of clothes in there. Have definitely your extra battery packs for chargers, maybe some snacks and water, and just pack that patience.
You've got to stay ready. And I was just thinking about, I flew out of HOU, Houston's Hobby Airport, yesterday, heading back to Atlanta. We had to get there 4 hours in advance, 3 hours in security. So it really is bad there. But here in Atlanta, as you said, it's not as bad, maybe 30 minutes wait time. What early signs should travelers be looking for here in Atlanta that things could be worsening and getting into maybe that hour, 2 hour delay period?
Well, first of all, they also should make sure to stay on top of the weather, as the weather disrupts now, 24 hours a day. We never know what's going on. Staying in touch with you all, keeping an eye on that, because that also causes delays as we are trying to get out of here or waiting on incoming flights for connections. And so not only do we have the weather delays, we have all of the other people trying to get in at the same time. And one of the things that I am always aware of is there could be a delay in getting online. So our flight might be delayed. We may have a terminal or a gate change, and all of a sudden we can't get our phone to work. So I try to do screenshots of what your flight is. So you try to memorize that flight number and have documents handy for all of your upcoming parts of your trip. And with and it's not something to be afraid of. It's just we need to be prepared for it.
We're going to bring in Jeff Shaw as well. Jeff Shaw, the CEO of the Freedom Collective. Thank you for making the time. We should say at the outset, I think a lot of people know this, Magic City is a strip club. You were opposed to this initial plan to have the promotional night and outspoken against it. Why?
Yeah, basically, what is an institution culturally to some is a symbol of exploitation and oppression and coercion for others. And what my experience over the past 15 years has been is women coming out of situations of trafficking who have storylines that intersected with the strip club, whether they had a fake ID made for them and they were put to work underage, whether they were being sent to work at the club by a pimp and having all their money taken at the end of the shift, or even in the cases recently, there were two, one in Texas, one in Wisconsin, where the clubs themselves were running sex trafficking operations. So to take something like a strip club and elevate it and normalize it in an institution like the Atlanta Hawks is, to me, counter to what the city is about and should be proud of.
And we should right off the top here, Magic City has responded to this decision to cancel the promotional night. I want to read part of this response. The club said, quote, "For more than 40 years, Magic City has been proud to serve as a cornerstone of Atlanta's hospitality, food, music, and nightlife culture. We remain committed to providing a safe, professional, and empowering environment for our performers, staff, and guests. We firmly denounce abuse, exploitation, or mistreatment in any form and stand for the dignity and safety of everyone in our industry." That's Magic City's perspective on this. Your group has a different look at it.
Yeah, and I want to say I appreciate genuinely the statement. And I think one thing that in our line of work we have to be careful about is that we don't overgeneralize and lump people and experiences together. But I think when you talk about, I saw one of the interviews that TMZ did with a dancer, and she's sitting next to her boss being asked if she feels like her work environment is exploitive or empowering. It's like, well, what do you think she's going to say? Why do you think they picked her to be the representation? What do you think she's going to say in front of her boss? And it may have
specifically at Magic City?
Yes. So they interviewed her with the owner of Magic City about, hey, you know, some people are saying this is a degrading experience for women overall, that it objectifies women. And she said, and I think very sincerely, that hasn't been my experience. And I'm not here to say that she's right or wrong, but I think we can look at objective conditions of an industry and versus a subjective experience of an individual that says, well, I haven't felt exploitive. That doesn't mean the conditions of the workplace or the industry are not foundationally exploitive.
Let's tease this out a little bit more, because as you well know, this was a topic that really, A, got a lot of attention in Atlanta, and B, drew very different responses. One of the things I've heard from people who were disappointed to see this promotional night canceled, they've said, in response to arguments a little bit like the ones that you're making, that the NBA and the Atlanta Hawks, that's not the kind of venue that should be holding up an establishment and promoting an establishment like Magic City. Some critics of the decision to cancel have said, well, professional sports have a long history of, if you watch TV broadcast, commercials for alcohol, commercials for other things that you've got to get an ID and be a certain age to access. What's so different about promoting Magic City?
Yeah, well, I thought about this, differentiating between something like the decision to consume alcohol or the decision to smoke cigarettes that may be harmful to me, but I'm going to purchase those things and do it. What we're talking about here, the consumer base, are the customers who go into the club. And then the women are, can we acknowledge what strip clubs are? I think that's one, we're talking a lot about lemon pepper wings and hip hop music. And the owner even said, don't worry, we're not going to have breasts out in the State Farm Arena, and we're not going to have any of the dancers there. What does that tell you about the promotion of the workplace when you're saying we won't have any of the people who work there actually present? Would we have a healthcare celebration night and say, don't worry, we won't have any actual nurses and doctors there? What is the disconnect? Well, it's the fact that what is at the center of the business model is people going to see women take their clothes off in front of them, and then to have an environment where you throw your money at the person or on the floor. We don't do that when we pay anybody else in any other workplace. You jeer at them, you leer at them, you catcall them, some people touch them, and that sometimes that behavior gets stopped and sometimes it doesn't. It is a workplace environment that is not celebrated anywhere else. And the broad culture, in my opinion, because most people who might be outraged about the promotion maybe don't frequent a strip club, they're just buying the message being sold by the industry. It's innocent, it's wings, it's music. Well, then be that. Why don't you be a music venue that brings in great live music and sells wings? Why do you have to have women taking off their clothes in the center of that? And our position at the Freedom Collective is that by its very nature, when you reduce someone down to a sexual object devoid of any of their other values, personality, traits, skills, that is by nature exploitive.
What do you say? Some folks have argued, and you've touched on this a little bit in this conversation, but I want to put it to you plainly. Some people say a place like Magic City is intertwined with a lot of Atlanta history and Atlanta culture, particularly the music industry, the hip-hop industry, and they have made the argument that a night at the Hawks, at State Farm Arena, promoting Magic City is a promotion of Atlanta culture more broadly, not specifically strippers so narrowly focused.
Yeah, I agree. I think hip hop is central to Atlanta culture. I think there's a lot of great food, barbecue. There's a lot of things that are cultural pillars. We also have a proud culture of fighting for human dignity and civil rights and a history of Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis. And to me, those stand for the values that we want to uphold and celebrate. And look, I want to refer to the interview of the Magic City club owner and the dancer. She was incredibly well-spoken, very sincere, kind, just seemed like an incredible person. But if you listen to her interview closely, at the end, she says, a promotion like this by the NBA might bring some more of the resources that we need to get out. It's wild when you look at what she actually said. I haven't felt exploited, but this could really help a lot of us and help us get the financial means to get out and move on. What that says to me, in my experience, is it is primarily drawing women who have vulnerability. It might be financial, and it might truly be a means for them to move forward. But on the flip side, the statistics, there was a Johns Hopkins University study, 73% of women newly in the sex adult entertainment industry, in strip clubs specifically, reported a substance use disorder. 75%. So you might go in looking for empowerment and some financial means to set yourself up better for life, but often what's waiting for you are the things you don't see coming. The substance use, 44% reported illegal drug use. So 50 to 75% saying they experience workplace violence. This is not an industry and an environment that inherently empowers women.
I want to end here. This is the statement from the Atlanta Hawks after the decision was made that by the NBA that this promotional night is not going to go forward. The Hawks said in response, quote, "While we are very disappointed in the NBA's decision to cancel our Magic City night promotion, we fully respect their decision. As a franchise, we remain committed to celebrating the best of Atlanta with authenticity in ways that continue to unite and bring us all together." What's your response to that statement? And what's your message to the Hawks?
So to the Hawks, I would say we want to take you up on that. If you want to elevate the best our city has to offer, then let's talk about the real work that's being done to empower women, to empower human dignity, to help survivors that are putting their lives back together. And my hope is that this conversation, even the cancellation of Magic City Night, wouldn't end the conversation, but that they would want to come to the table and say, hey, we've heard things we didn't expect to hear. Can we sit down and talk more about that?
David Kendrick, he is a Purple Heart recipient and Iraq War veteran who was shot by a sniper back in 2007. Now you travel the country speaking about PTSD and the invisible wounds of war. So take us back to the beginning. What inspired you to join the Army?
Well, in my hometown from Rochester, New York, there wasn't too much opportunity for me as a 17-year-old kid. So the Army provided me with the most opportunity leaving high school.
So you were deployed to Iraq. What kind of missions were you typically carrying out while you were there?
All right, so I deployed as a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout, and I deployed during the height of the war in 2006 during the troop surge. So we had different types of missions where we operated from out in sector with the actual Iraqi police. So we deployed on dismounted patrols, walking up and down the streets of Baghdad in 2006 and 2007.
And so talk more about that moment that changed everything for you.
Sure. June 17th, 2007, I was deployed with my unit, the 361st Cavalry Regiment out of Fort Carson, Colorado. And I was 20 years old at the time, just walking down the street on a dismounted patrol, and I heard a loud crack, and I was shot by a sniper. We were ambushed. I got shot by a sniper. The bullet broke my left leg, it severed my femoral artery, and it clipped my sciatic nerve. And then a truck of insurgents, they came on the traffic corner that we were on and did something called pray and spray, and I was shot again in my right leg.
Wow. And that is the same mission that led to your Purple Heart?
Yes, I earned a Purple Heart that day, yeah.
And so you've spoken very openly about battling PTSD, addiction, and even homelessness. What helped you sort of start turning things around for yourself?
Well, during my injuries, I got sent to a unit called the Warrior Transition Unit, and I saw how many other veterans were struggling. I made my E5 in this unit, and I got put on something called CQ, Charge of Quarters, and I saw on many occasions my fellow veterans were committing suicide in the barracks. And when I moved back home to Rochester, New York, I got taken in by a program called the Warrior Salute Program. And when I was in group therapy, I realized that not too many veterans knew how to verbalize what they were feeling. And that's why we had so many veterans committing suicide, and people really didn't know why. And that's when I started my company, Lion Speaking Agency, to speak on behalf of veterans who just don't know how to advocate for themselves and for the mental health of other veterans.
And when you hear about new fighting in the Middle East today, does it take you back to those memories in Iraq?
It does. I'm very concerned about it because my little sister's in the Army now. She saw me go in, get injured, and now, you know, we may have boots on the ground in Iran at any time now. And now, you know, we have two different groups of veterans. You know, we have the war in Iraq veterans, the OEF, OIF veterans like myself, who may see a new group of veterans fighting again in the Middle East, and it's very concerning.
And so lastly, we have about 30 seconds left. What do you want fellow veterans who may be struggling right now to hear as part of this message?
Well, help is definitely available. You know, I'm a national advocate for NAMI. There's a program called NAMI Homefront that provides family and caregivers of veterans with free mental health resources. And the most important thing you can do is just talk about how you feel. It may be with a close friend, maybe with a family member, but you know, once you are able to verbalize what you feel and the PTSD that you may be dealing with, then we know as a country how to tackle that and hopefully stop it from happening if this new generation of veterans gets sent to the Middle East.
You know, police departments across the country are turning to technology to try to fight crime faster, and the city of Chamblee doing just that too. They just opened a real-time crime center. I want to talk more about that now with the police chief of Chamblee, Mike Dieppe, joining us now in person, in studio. Chief, it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so the city invested some $2 million in this real-time crime center. Why is that a good investment for residents?
It's a really good investment because this crime center helps us solve crimes and bring closure to victims of crimes in a more expeditious manner, and it acts as a force multiplier for our officers on the streets.
What do you mean force multiplier?
Force multiplier. So technology kind of lets us do things where a officer doing manual work would take maybe hours to go out and look for cameras and knock on doors to see if we could find cameras, where we have the chance to put a few cameras out in places where there are thoroughfares through the city that may allow us to capture vehicles and or subjects who are committing crimes. Also allows for a depository for if people want to share videos with us, they can be sent to us via email and analyzed in our crime center. And again, with the idea of helping us identify criminals and then going out and making arrests to bring closures to our victims.
In other words, people who live in Chamblee can send you their Ring doorbell video to try to help out?
That Ring doorbell cameras, their closed circuit TV cameras, businesses that have cameras set up in their shops, schools, anything like that, where there's a camera available, if they wanted to share, could share with us, and then we would use that to help us close the crime, and then provide evidence to our district attorney's office to help prosecute those crimes.
Look, I know it's been widely reported. Nationwide, police department's been struggling with staffing really since COVID. How are you guys doing with staffing? And is this also an instance where the cameras can kind of help out?
We do. We have our peaks and valleys. We have about 4 vacancies for sworn officers right now, which is not a bad thing, but we'd like to be fully staffed. And when we don't have full staffing, the cameras provide us a resource, again, because they're an extra set of eyes out there. And a lot of things happen when no one's around, but the cameras may pick up something. We can go back and view camera footage because we keep the footage for 30 days.
30 days.
And
okay.
It's our video, so it's the property of Champlain Police Department, and it'll allow us to go back and try to identify a perpetrator of a crime. It even helps with quality of life issues. If we're looking for somebody who had a medical emergency, or if there's somebody graffitiing in an area, that there's a camera that picks it up. We can see that right away.
How many people do you have working in the center?
Right now, there's only 2 people in there. It's not full time. It's staffed during the day.
Okay.
And it's we're in our infancy because we just opened last week. But we do hope to have 2 or 3 people in there, at least daytime into the afternoon hours, and in the beginning 4 or 5 days out of the week before we progress to hopefully 7 days a week, at least during peak times.
Are these going to be sworn officers, or is this a civilian job?
We're going to have a mix in there. We're having our sworn because they're able to get on the radio and transmit stuff via the radio, but we're going to bring in, we have currently one on staff, what we call an intelligence analyst. That's a non-sworn position, and that person is an expert in the computer programs that we use to identify criminals, do our social media searches, help us look for addresses, license plates, vehicles that belong to perpetrators, and then help us identify where they are so we can send our sworn people out to make the arrest.
I love geeking out over the granularity of this stuff with you, but I think people watching right now may want to know, okay, what does this mean for me? I mean, can you give us a real example of how the Real-Time Crime Center has maybe helped solve a crime, or how you hope it will?
Yes, there's a few examples, but one that comes to mind right away is we had a homicide in our city in 2024 at a Quick Trip, and right after the homicide happened, a person gave a vehicle description. We were quickly able to find the vehicle left in an area where it passed a license plate reader, which would feed into our Real-Time Crime Center. That license plate was then entered into a system, so if it went in areas where there were other license plate readers, we could see where the car was going. Following that license plate reader hit, even without the crime center, we're able to track the car down into East Point, quickly identify the subject, and within an hour of the homicide, make an arrest because of the mutual aid from our jurisdictions, but because of the technology, specifically license plate readers in this case, that allowed us to identify the vehicle, where it went, and where the offender fled to.
Big arrest, getting a violent criminal off the streets. How do you balance big moments like that with the privacy concerns that some citizens are weighing, saying they're worried about living in a surveillance state?
That's a really good question, and the answer is this, and it's a hard answer for some to feel, but I really believe that there's feelings involved in the few that do not like this because they perceive it to be a surveillance. The reality is that the rights of people who are the victims of crime deserve to have those crimes solved expeditiously. And this is a crime-solving tool. It's not a surveillance tool. We ran our analytics, and we determined that 17 million cars pass by license plate readers in the city of Chamblee every month. It is impossible for us to try to conduct surveillance. However, if you specifically are the victim of a crime and you say that there's a red Toyota pickup truck, we can go back and isolate red Toyota pickup trucks, try to identify an offender, and again, bring closure to your crime. And that not only helps in crimes, but think about missing persons. Think about people who lose a loved one. If we can use that technology to generate leads and to help bring closure, it's a win for the community, and it's definitely a win for the victims of crimes.
There has also been nationwide concern over whether ICE or DHS can access some of the data that is captured by these license plate readers. Flock, which you guys use in Chamblee, they've said they do not sell or share data with ICE. They say it's communities who control whether the federal government can access that data. So does Chamblee share its license plate reader data with any federal government agency?
We do not. However, we would if we were asked. Our license plate reader data, our pan-tilt zoom cameras that are capturing live feeds, are ours. We follow state law, and if a federal partner or another law enforcement agency were to ask us for assistance, we would definitely provide it. as we would with the general public through an open records request. It's not like that we would say no to a citizen and say yes to ICE. We say yes to a citizen. We say yes to a federal partner or a local police agency as well. However, we control the data. And to this point, we've not had any requests where any federal agency has asked us for any of our data.
Okay, thank you for clarifying on that. Would that be a case-by-case basis, or if they come to you and ask for it, you say, absolutely, you've asked, we're giving it?
If a law enforcement partner comes to us with a law enforcement need, the going rule is that we would give it to them with no questions asked.
Let's say a year from now, we're sitting in here together talking about 1 year since the Real-Time Crime Center is open. What does success look like for you? How are you measuring it? Is it clearance rates? Is it a drop in crime? Something else?
For us, a safer community, all in all. So we'd like to see a drop in crime. Chamblee is an incredibly safe community as it is, but there are large-scale events coming to the city. The World Cup will be here in just a couple of months, and it's, again, making the community feel safe in everything that we do. We host a lot of concerts and events throughout the year, and it provides us that opportunity to try to make the environment as safe as we can, using technology to identify threats and possibly neutralize them before they become action that harms our citizens.
All right, you mentioned the World Cup. It's about 90 days away now. Was it important to get this thing up and running by then? And what kind of conversations are going on behind the scenes when it comes to keeping your community safe?
It is. There's going to be a huge law enforcement contingent from around the state that will come to the Atlanta Police Department. We are only a partner agency to the bigger whole, but the meetings have been going on for months where we've been identifying where our needs are, where we can plug in and participate. And our city will also host events or have parties that are specific to the World Cup. And we want to make sure that anybody that goes to a large gathering in our city feels safe. And those cameras, again, help us see, areas that we would not be able to see if we didn't have officers there. They're eyes and ears for us. And again, a tool to help us bring safety for our community.
Chief, I also want to ask about keeping your officers safe. And you've just unveiled a new defensive tactics training room also last week. Tell me what that's all about.
So we like to do defensive tactics training when we can. We didn't have a facility specifically designed for it. And this is a room that has mats in it that are a couple inches thick. So if we are taking each other down to the ground and doing different defensive tactics moves, we're able to do it without getting hurt. We unveiled the room, but we also did it with technology because our tasers that are from Axon have virtual reality. We can have basically a matted room that's enclosed. We have TV screens in there and can watch what's going on when we do different tactics. And even more so, we wear body cameras. And if we see things in the body cameras where there's deficiencies in training that we can identify, we'll bring in our entire staff or individual officers, show them on the TV screens where we think there's areas for improvement, let them see firsthand, and then show them techniques that are meant to improve their tactics out there, not only for their safety, but for the safety of the community when we're having to use force or engage in those use of force incidents.
Chief Dieppe from Chamblee Police, really appreciate your time today answering all our questions. Anything else you want to add for folks watching?
Just thank you all for being here. If there's any questions, please feel free to come out and ask us. I think information, when you have it, will give you a better tool to make decisions about crime centers and technology police are using. But all in all, it's meant for the victims. It's meant to solve crimes. And if there are bad actors, it's the chief's job, the department's job, to hold those people accountable, discipline them, and fire them if they are using the cameras for anything other than their intended purpose.
When you say bad actors, you're talking about people who would have access to the system.
I'm talking about police officers or police personnel. If anybody were to do anything that's not intended for it, it's up to the department to hold those people accountable and make sure that they take action to remove those people from the department or from the profession.
Is there a log of who is searching through everything and their reasons why?
Very good question. Yes, there is a complete detailed log. So anytime somebody goes in and does a search, it leaves an audit trail, and you can see what they were searching, why they were searching, who was searching, and when they were searching, how many times they were searching. So if there's anything that's going on where somebody does something and we get a complaint, we could go back and audit every time that person used the cameras for what and what they were looking at.
We're joined right now by Chuck Bell with Consumer Reports with a look at a rising and AI-powered scam threat. Chuck, can you hear us okay?
Yes, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Chuck. Thanks for your time here. Let's just start with this. Consumer Reports, you all monitor these kinds of things. Bring us up to speed on what kind of threat and what kind of maybe rocket fuel AI is giving to scammers who are trying to take people's money.
Well, the amount of scams in the United States has roughly doubled since 2018. We have about 2.6 million complaints of scams coming into the Federal Trade Commission this year, resulting in an estimated 10 billion in losses. So this is a huge problem. Most of us probably know someone in our social circle who's been scammed, and so you really have to be on your guard, especially with all this new technology that's out there.
And the fact that AI is out there, it is easily accessible by just about anybody with an internet connection, and increasingly the technology is getting better and better and better. Are those all factors that are making the job, if you want to call it that, of a scammer easier and allowing them to be more widespread, to proliferate their attempted scams?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it allows them to be very efficient at scale. They only need a small number of people to respond to them to make an enormous amount of money. And they are using micro-targeting, taking information that's been lost in data breaches and personalizing and customizing that information to individual consumers. So they know your address, they may know the number of people in your household, your birthday, and other really personal details about you. And that allows them to get under your radar. If they're impersonating a bank or a government agency like the IRS or a delivery service, they can send you a spoofed phone call. You may think that phone call is coming from your bank, but it's actually coming from a scammer operating from overseas. So it's really important for consumers not to respond quickly to a communication that's dubious. And so I would say a lot of cell phone calls are dubious, but also text messages and messages on messaging app like Facebook Messenger and Telegram.
Chuck, let's drill down on that a little bit. You touched on a lot of different topics there in terms of what some of these scams can look like. Are there particular formats that, in your experience, are the most common styles of these scams? I'm thinking potentially people, as you referenced, calling pretending to be a government agency, calling to pretend to be a long-lost loved one. That used to be popular in the email era. What are the most popular and common formats now?
Yeah, I mean, to have a successful scam, it's important to have a convincing story. So a lot of them revolve around protecting your money. And so it could be your bank or somebody representing that they represent your bank or credit card company, calling you up to say they want to protect your money. It's under threat, but we need to get your password or your secret code so we can verify that your account is okay. Never respond to a call like that. Hang up and call the bank yourself. So that type of imposter scam is increasingly common. We also see scams revolving around applying for a job. So sometimes people apply for a job, it appears they've been accepted, and then the employment agency asks them to do unusual things like wire some money through Zelle or send us some money so we can buy a computer for you. So you never want to send money to someone that you have no ability to trust or that you haven't met in person. So anytime somebody contacts you out of the blue and tells you to act immediately, you want to be in control. You want to be the one who's controlling the communication with the bank or with your job. So hang up and call the number that you have for the bank. Don't just respond to someone who claims to work for the bank.
You get at something we hear from a lot of folks who deal, unfortunately, with the aftermath of scammers. And that's sometimes the best advice is just take a breath. Don't act immediately. I know these scammers often try to ratchet up the pressure and the tension and the urgency in their requests. Before we let you go here, last question. You've touched on a lot of these topics, but let's put it all in one place. The top 3 or 4 tips you would recommend to anybody who is watching to help guard themselves and not fall victim to these scams that, as you have pointed out, are increasingly common.
If you can, try to share less information about yourself when you're operating online. Get an extension to your browser so that your data is not being collected. Limit information sharing on platforms like Facebook. Be suspicious of any emergency situations that crop up. And have a no share policy for your passwords and sensitive financial information. And finally, get an outside perspective. So talk to one of your kids or a neighbor or a friend about what someone told you to do, but don't take action immediately when you think you have an emergency like this. 9 times out of 10, it turns out it's an imposter trying to separate you from your money.
The special election to replace former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is now headed to a runoff after no candidate won a majority in a real crowded field. Now, Democrat Sean Harris and Republican Clay Fuller, they're going to face off in April in a race that's drawing national attention. It even brought President Trump to Georgia. Joining us now to break down what it all means, Emory political science professor Andra Gillespie. So, Andra, what really stood out to you the most from last night's results?
Well, this race pretty much hewed to expectations. I expected that Sean Harris was going to consolidate support amongst the Democrats, and President Trump's endorsement of Clay Fuller really did pay off. So what I was paying attention to was actually what the accumulated Democratic and Republican votes look like. And I think that that is going to be an indication of what we should expect to see happen in the runoff election. So if we add all the Democratic votes up, it's about 40% of the vote. And so if we add all the Republican votes up, then that's going to get you close to 60%, which is about what Congresswoman Greene did in 2024. So I think the big wild card here is going to be turnout. Are people going to remember to show up in April for this runoff election? And if we do see huge variances in turnout amongst the Democratic and the Republican coalition, I think that that's going to be a huge signal for organizing for the general election for both parties.
What do you think these results say about the political mood in Georgia right now?
Well, I think they speak more to the dynamics of District 14. This is a heavily Republican district. This is a district where any Republican nominee would be the favorite. Clay Fuller is the type of Republican candidate who is going to be solidly conservative, who is going to support President Trump's agenda most of the time, but who isn't necessarily going to make the same waves that Marjorie Taylor Greene did. And I think that that might have partly explained why President Trump chose to endorse him over Colton Moore, who sort of, sees himself as being more Marjorie Taylor Greene-esque. That being said, this isn't a place where I expect to see Democrats try to flip a district, but what they do want to do is they want to overperform. So Sean Harris got a little over 36% of the vote in 2024. If he can get 40% of the vote, that might be a good harbinger for Democratic efforts to lose by less in Republican parts of the state, which could actually be a boon for Jon Ossoff as he runs for re-election in the fall.
Now, you talked about, getting people re-energized to head back out to vote for a runoff, but let's talk about the midterms. Could this runoff, say something about voter enthusiasm heading into the midterms?
Yes. So if in this runoff election we see heavier than expected Democratic turnout relative to Republican turnout, that is going to be a barometer of enthusiasm. And Democrats are hoping to cash in on this enthusiasm. And this enthusiasm, I should note, is not necessarily support for the Democratic Party as it is opposition to Donald Trump and his administration's agenda. But if they can harness that energy to turn out at higher rates than usual, then nationally Democrats are hoping that might be enough to overcome, redistricting challenges and other types of things so that they can gain seats in Congress.
So for the people who don't follow politics closely, what should they watch between now and the April 7th runoff?
One, I would expect to see more ads from these two candidates. If you live in the 14th district, I would expect to see people knocking on your doors. If you don't, that's a red flag. And in particular, what we want to see is how many people show up to vote in April for the runoff election, and remember to do that in the midst of all of the things that will be going on around that time.
You see anyone with an early advantage or like a strategy to change that if they don't feel they have an advantage right now?
Well, the fundamentals of the district certainly privilege Clay Fuller. And so this is his race to lose. I think the question is how well does Sean Harris do? And the metric is not whether or not he wins, but if he can get at least 40% of the vote and perhaps even make that margin even narrower. Even if he loses by a margin of less than 10 votes, Democrats are going to count that as a victory.